All right, we are going to move right into the mayor's candidates forum. I'm going to reread the ground rules because many of you came. As you can see, the questions were prepared in advance. There's no opening or closing statements because of the time constraints. Each candidate will be able to weave their own stories into their answers throughout the night. We'll probably have 10 or 11 questions directed towards each candidate in a random order. We did a random order to set the seating arrangement, and then we'll take turns going first to last, and we'll move down the order. Candidates will have a maximum of 2 minutes to answer each question. In addition to the 2-minute answer questions, there will be a series of rapid-fire, one-word yes or no questions, which some of you saw. Each candidate, which no one in the last forum used, each candidate will have 2 opportunities to ask another candidate a direct or follow-up question. And then that candidate will have 1 minute to answer the questions. Candidates may use their question at their discretion at any time during the forum. The use of these questions is optional. And if a candidate is asked a question, he or she will have 1 minute to answer. So at the end, if you've already gone and then somebody asks you a question, I'll still give you a minute to respond. Everybody got the ground rules before the forum, right? Everybody knew what we were doing? Yes. And again, keep in mind that no one will be not given the opportunity to respond, and you have those 2 optional questions. Here we go. Our first 2-minute question. Again, we have our volunteer timekeeper, Myung. Everybody can see the cards. We want to thank ACT and PCC for hosting. Our first question goes to Jason. Not all council districts in the city have equal parks and open space opportunities. How would you address that? And do you have a pet parks project in mind?
I would address that by actually assessing what the needs of those individual communities were. I know that we have communities that are not overburdened, but they have a large supply of regular parks, and then we have communities like our Old Town areas that have very few in some of the communities. I'm not talking about the actual Central Park or Memorial Park, but I believe that we can create a lot more recreational area and parkland out of some of existing areas that we don't use. And in regards to Old Town particularly, I'm a big fan of parklets. And not just in Old Town, I'm a big fan of parklets and bringing those to the Northwest District where I'm from, because I see that things like that would kind of improve the North Lake area and Washington area, which is very troublesome and I would say unattractive at times. So if we can bring some of these parklets and some of these, I guess, recreational little spaces into some of these areas that need them, we can do a lot more as, I guess, sorry, I'm learning the cards. But I think we can do a lot more as a community, and I believe that we can have a more positive area, a safer area, and basically a safer city.
Thank you. Mr. Shea. Same question.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Not all council districts in the city have equal parks and open space opportunities. How would you address that? And do you have a pet parks project in mind?
Well, what I would do, I don't have a project in mind. What I would do is I would try and make sure that the parks are marketed right for full use. Some of them, as in Brookside Park, is a much larger park. Make sure we get the full use out of that because it's a larger park compared to like Memorial Park, a smaller park. Pretty much that would probably be the basic approach that I would use for this limited purpose.
All right, Mr. Thompson?
I began my civic activities. One of the first things I was engaged in was a member of the Parks and Recreation Commission of the city of Pasadena. And so we looked at that time, a number of years ago, very thoroughly, very carefully at parks and the open space we have in our community. And we decided and we did every effort we possibly could to preserve it. In fact, I was the author of a park preservation ordinance that was put to the public and actually passed by the public on that. So I think we have to be realistic, and we are a community that is, has very concentrated downtown areas. We're a mid-sized city with lots of challenges that we face with that respect. So I'm not sure that trying to think about having more parks is realistic or more open space is realistic. What we can do, and what I would certainly insist upon doing, is to make sure that the open space and parks we have is, number one, safe for everybody, number two, has the opportunities for people to use it, and whether we're competing with Little League or soccer or whatever else. Certainly the area around the Rose Bowl, Area H down there, are examples of that, heavily used and properly so. But people also go walking down there, and that's fine too, and bicycling, which can be sometimes a bit of a challenge, but nonetheless, it happens. And so I think the thing is to really focus more on what we have now and do our very best to improve that. I do not have a project or a new park project in mind. I'm not sure that's realistic for the city of Pasadena.
Thank you. Mr. Tornick?
Thank you. The open space element of the city's general plan has a very detailed analysis on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis of available parks within short walking distance. And so the areas that are deficient in public parks are very well defined in that plan. The city has recently changed its funding formula for new parks to reduce the ability to reduce the size, the minimum size of parks from 5 acres to 1 acre, so that we can begin to fill some of those gaps. It really was a bad judgment to demand that we create new parks only at the 5-acre size, because frankly it's just too expensive and it's impractical, would require too much displacement. So I think we figured out that in the neighborhoods where there are small parks that are lacking within walking distance, how to solve that problem. And the new development pays substantial fees in excess of $20,000 per unit toward a parks fund called the Quimby fee to help fund those gaps. The other critical issue relates to the large parks, which are a community-wide resource. And what we have to do there is make sure that we protect them. We have 2 specific examples right now at Hahamunga, which is our a large park and a very natural state, is now threatened by an inappropriate county plan that will wreak havoc. And the Central Arroyo, which is our most popular park, is being grossly overutilized, in part because of Rose Bowl activities, but in part because there's just over-programming in that park and no central coordination of how that park should be managed.
Ms. Robbins?
Thank you. One of the reasons why I'm running for mayor is because I want Pasadena to be the most progressive and innovative city of the 21st century. And in order to do that, we have to be very creative, not just in how we approach open space and adding additional green space to our city, but across the board on multiple issues. One of the things that I was successful at is increasing green space and recreational opportunities in District 1. I was instrumental in leading the effort to make the playground area, the green space at Cleveland Elementary School, green space opportunity for the neighborhoods. As Councilmember Tornick referenced in the green space element, there is a goal that every resident in our city will have the opportunity to walk to green space within a ½ mile of their resident. And so in District 1, of course, because the Arroyo is a part of that, we have, some would say we have an overabundance of green space, but I believe citywide we have a number of parks that are underutilized, even amongst the multiple shared joint use playgrounds that we have with the PUSD. I believe a lot of residents don't know that those spaces are available for weekend and after-school use after the children are out of school. And so I believe we have to do a better job at advertising those opportunities for use of the green space. And with regard to increasing its availability of natural space, one of the things that I have also been successful at is removing one of the soccer fields that was originally scheduled to be included within the Hahamunga watershed area, being able to work with the city council to secure grant funding so that we could move one of those fields to John Muir High School for the benefit of those students there in the surrounding neighborhood, and being able to leave that space natural in the Hahamunga. So again, I think we have to be creative about how we approach that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan?
Thank you. This is obviously a sweet spot for me. I have 4 children, so you know, parks for us are survival. If any of you have had parents who've had kids locked in a house, you know that getting them outside is obviously something very important to a lot of the families raising kids in Pasadena. I think parks are such a key, essential part of our ability to create community in our town, and obviously the open space that we have is one of the real treasures that we have in Pasadena. And you know, clearly we have some uneven distribution of parks, or maybe the quality of parks throughout Pasadena, and I think that you all alluded to, you know, some of the analysis on that, and I think that's an important consideration ongoing. I don't know that every community has the exact same needs or desires from their parks, so I think it's important for the mayor to continue to talk to members of the community and ask them what they want from their parks. If we're putting playgrounds in places where they want other activities, or there's a different age population in certain areas, then maybe we should be responsive around that. I love the parklets idea as well. I think it's a neat idea for Old Town. In terms of my personal interest in our parks, I think the real opportunity is continued partnership with a lot of the nonprofits that use our parks, and we have some great examples of that. My kids play, you know, Little League at Pasadena Southwest Little League, which uses a space and maintains a space, which allows us to really, I think, do a nice job keeping a public space in very good shape. Obviously, we have tons of neat partnerships down in the Arroyo with things like Kids Space and those types of groups. And I think that that's really a model for us ongoing, so that we don't put added stress on the city, but we continue to really value our parks and keep them up to the best of our ability.
Thank you. We started out with a softball question, and I wanted to make sure everybody was seated and ready. Let's give it up for our mayoral candidates. You met them first. Jason Harden, Alan Shea, Bill Thompson, Terry Tornick, Jackie Robinson, and Don Morgan. We're going to go to our next question. Mr. Shea, it is to you. Many communities are struggling with police oversight questions and race relations issues, especially with respect to police officers' treatment of the African American community. Do you favor increased police oversight in the city of Pasadena? And if so, what specific changes to the current system would you like to implement? If you support the current system, please explain why. Mr. Shea.
Well, you gave me a curveball there on that one. And the reason I say that is because I was arrested in May of 2014 by the Sheriff Department. And as a result of my arrest and being incarcerated for almost 2 weeks, I learned a lot because of how police officers can abuse their authority. I've never been arrested. I'm the 8th of 12 children from a single-parent household, went to John Muir High School, went to PCC, graduated from USC, went to law school, and have been employed with my own firm for 35 years. I take this to heart about police abuse. I think that we as a community need some form of police regulation, whether that's an oversight committee or someone who's sensitive and knows the community. I have been a part of Pasadena community since '63, moving here from Jackson, Mississippi, with 12 brothers and sisters and 140 offsprings from my mom. If anyone knows the delicate and sensitive approaches that we need in our community, I do. I'm very active in the community to make sure that kids have pathways to education, to PCC, to other institutions around here. And I believe that if we force the police to have a certain standard, then it's going to be difficult for us to have a balanced interaction with them. It's already went down, or it's already failed once. We've tried already to initiate an oversight committee here in Pasadena, and it failed. So they're telling us that that's not the appropriate way. We need to find an appropriate way. I believe the appropriate way is somebody who is conscious-minded about the communities here in Pasadena, especially in the Northwest. And as a vice chair of Northwest Commission,
Please wrap it up.
thank you, I can attest to how active we are to monitor, especially after the McDade killing. We didn't have any civil unrest. We were able to bring the community together and move forward
Thank you.
a clear plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, same question.
The McDade killing, to which Mr. Shea has referred, obviously was a tragedy and should never have happened. That's not what we expect of our police department. The city ended up paying the mother and father in excess of $1 million as somewhat compensation for that killing. I think we need and would certainly insist upon transparency among our police department and all of the agencies and commissions, et cetera, that we have in this city. I would want to do a thorough review of the Public Safety Committee, for example, that the City Council already has, before assuming or concluding that we need to put together any oversight committee composed of citizens and staff members, et cetera. Once we have those results, I think that then we can address carefully and thoughtfully whether any additional oversight is required of the department. But obviously things have failed, things have not gone well, not gone the way they should. That's completely unacceptable. As Mr. Shea has said also, we really have to do a better job with education. I'm delighted to hear him refer to PCC. I'm a member of the elected member of the Board of Trustees of Pasadena City College, get to serve with Dr. Mann and others, and have real pleasure and delight in doing that. So yes, this place plays a critical role in the education of our community, our children. We need to work and continue to work carefully with the school district, with the city and all of our departments, and with PCC and the Pasadena Educational Foundation, of which I currently am the president. That's the oldest educational foundation in the state, 43 plus years. Over that time, we have donated about a little bit more than $140 million to support our public schools in Pasadena. So we have a lot of work to do, and that's the way I would approach it.
Thank you. Mr. Tornick, same question.
I think that I'm satisfied that the Pasadena Police Department is a very well-trained department, and I am also, in looking at the analysis, I'm impressed that there are very few uses of force, actually, that happen in this city every year. Unhappily, when it doesn't take a lot of those events to undermine the confidence of the community in the way we're managing police activity. The discussion that has gone on so far is whether or not the City Council's Public Safety Committee, which is comprised of members of elected officials after all, really represents the sort of ultimate and best possible citizen review board, because the members of that committee are all elected officials, and so they should be in a position to be the best imaginable review board. Unfortunately, I don't think that that is quite adequate, and I am convinced that it makes good sense to investigate the applicability of a trained professional to provide advice to that Public Safety Committee. City Council members in Pasadena, as you know, are part-time. Not all the members of the Public Safety Committee have expertise in that particular area. I think there are other departments around the country that have been well served by having trained professionals that provide insight and advice and independent review to elected officials, and I think that might be a welcome addition in Pasadena.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. So first, let me start by saying that, of course, there is room and an opportunity, and it's much needed for additional citizen input to the police department policies. As chair of the I've been a member of the city, Public Safety Committee of the City Council since I was elected in 2007, and have spent the last 2 years as the chair of the committee. And in the last 2 years since I've become chair, there has not been an opportunity where a citizen has not had the opportunity to come before the Public Safety Committee, lodge a complaint. We have taken active efforts to act on complaints as they come forward to the committee, one of them being a citizen concerned with a statement on the complaint form that they believed prevented some members of the community from willingly reporting incidents of police misconduct. I do believe that there is space for additional citizen input, and I am supportive of reinstating the police, the citizen advisory group that was reporting to the police chief a few years ago, recently disbanded. And I believe that group, once reinstated, is the group that should be charged with exploring other avenues of whether or not additional oversight or input is needed. Use of force is in fact down across the city, but as we talk about oversight of the police department and additional citizen input, I am equally concerned about gun violence in this city. If you look at the data and statistics, we have had officer-involved shootings. I believe the number is 3. But I can tell you, as the council member for District 1, we have had an overabundance of person-to-person shooting in the city, and gang violence is an issue. And I don't think we have to choose either or between the two. I believe we need to choose both. We need to address both. And at the crux of some of the criticisms of the police department is trust and transparency. And
Please
as a member,
conclude.
as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, I have remained committed to increasing that level of trust and addressing issues as they've come before the committee.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morgan, same question.
I think oversight should really be about creating a process or an entity that is actively facilitating communication and conversation between the police force, between our civic leaders, between the community, in order to really address the things that we've been dealing with this city for decades. Not for 3 years. We've been dealing with a lot of the challenges between a number of our different demographics in this community for decades. And I think that any attempt to create more oversight really should be focused on creating communication and conversation. We know that community policing works. I've been working in Watts for the last 11 years and have watched it work in Nickerson Gardens, and I can assure you, if LAPD can create a good relationship with members of the community in Nickerson Gardens through a better community policing model, it's something that we should be doing here. I just spent the afternoon with Chief Sanchez last week, and we talked about this, and one of the things he pointed out was he is, in his time, has not personally ever denied a request for any information coming from City Council. So, in terms of the direct line of communication or transparency, I think that those are probably there, but we also know we can do better. We also know we have some things structurally that make it challenging. Less than 10% of our police force live in Pasadena. It's tough to create relationships when you don't live in the community. Working 312s throughout the week, so you're only there 3 days a week and then gone for 4 days, again, makes it very difficult to create sustained relationships. So we have some structural things in place that I think makes it tough for us to create a level of communication we're trying to create as a community in order to really view the police force as a partner as opposed to somehow an obstacle.
Thank you. Mr. Harden.
First, I'd like to say I'm in favor of civilian oversight of our police department. I believe that it allows an extra set of eyes to be placed on the duties and the actions of our police department. I feel that council sets the tone for how all the departments do their job. And when that's lacking, we need the public, because the council's job is to represent the public. But when that is lacking, we need the public to kind of represent themselves and actually be involved in the processes of law enforcement. And even if it's to become more familiar with how they do their job, I believe that it'll be a positive experience because it's all about relationship building. If we build a strong relationship between our public and our police department. And it's particularly in the African American communities and the minority communities. We do need initiatives to create some type of opportunities for the public to engage our police officers in a more positive light, you know, because if the first time we interact with the police officer, if it's negative, then all our interactions after that, we're presuming, are going to be negative. But if we start with some type of relationship building and start by promoting interactions, whether it be through the PALS program or through a lot of mentor programs that we can implement, if we just, I guess, if we become more involved as a community in how we're being policed, I can only see positive things coming from that.
Thank you. Our third question goes to Mr. Thompson. There are a lot of questions, accusations, and comments flying around Facebook concerning different candidates' accurate position on the 710 freeway tunnel. Tonight presents your opportunity to set the record straight on the 710 tunnel. It is probable that as mayor, you may find yourself serving on a regional government agency or planning body deliberating the fate of the 710 freeway. If the decision were to come before you, would you vote yes or no to move forward with the 710 tunnel? And would you, in your capacity as mayor, actively oppose or support the tunnel regardless of a local initiative or the outcome of the EIR? Mr. Thompson. No wiggle room in that question, is there?
Well, as a lawyer, I think I can probably find some wiggle room to provide an answer for you, but I'll try not to do that. I attended and participated in the two Designing a Ditch workshops that were put together over at Maranatha High School by Audrey O'Kelly and Mick Hansen and some others. And we talked about the tunnel, talked about the possibility of trying to complete that. The cost of doing that is just so far out of the realm of any possibility that I think we're wasting our time and energy even thinking about it. I think it's $1 billion per mile or some such thing, so it's not practical to pursue that. Moreover, there are some real-world issues that would flow from that. You have to have vents in the tunnel for air to be let out of that. Well, if you got trucks going through that, can you imagine the impact on residential neighborhoods from having that happen? I just don't think that's going to get us anywhere. In those workshops, we talked about alternative ways to easing some of the burden on our streets on Pasadena. For example, maybe making some of the overhead passes over the existing ditch only pedestrian or pedestrian and bicycles and that type of thing. So I would explore those things more completely. Also, I think realistically, we need to do a better job of extending our light rail from Pasadena out to the Bob Hope Airport. That's certainly doable. It costs a lot of money, yes, but I think that's a much more practical way to ease some of the burden on our neighborhoods than trying to fool with a tunnel. We can do bus lanes or special lanes for transportation to and from that airport. The same thing with LAX. We can work with the city of Los Angeles and the county and the other cities to extend the existing light rail all the way to the airport. It's stopped a mile from there now because of pressure from taxi drivers and bus drivers, et cetera. So those are some of the things that I would do, but I would not support the tunnel based on what I know at the present time.
All right. We will go to Mr. Tornick. And by the way, in the first round, the school board candidates never went over the 2 minutes, just so you know. I didn't have to admonish them once. So it says something about academics versus politicians. I don't know. Mr. Tornick, same question.
I oppose the tunnel. I oppose it because I don't think it will offer the benefits that have been suggested that it will offer. I think that it's a failed alternative. I've reviewed the environmental documentation and the supporting traffic studies, and I think I don't think it'll work, at least not as advertised. I think that relying on the fact that it's going to cost $1 billion a mile will not stop it, because I think that there are an array of supporters. There's a proposal that it be done on a joint venture basis, so it'll be largely privately funded. So I think it's not going to be enough to simply say it's going to cost too much, so it won't happen. I proposed, and it has now been implemented, that a task force be formed to develop a Pasadena preferred alternative, because I think it's not productive for a community simply to say what it's against. I think it's important for the community to say what it's for. And in my review of the 5 alternatives that have been proposed, I think there is a combination of alternatives that would offer some significant benefits to the region, not just to Pasadena, that we can get behind with an alliance of adjacent communities that will have enough muscle to have the impact that we need to choose a preferred alternative. So I think we have to take this opportunity to benefit the city, not simply be in a naysayer condition. And I think we've embraced that. That commission is hard at work. If it all works well, we may be able to realize benefits in terms of improvements in our streets, including potentially the grade separations of the Gold Line, which is driving everybody nuts.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
So as early as, or as late as a few weeks ago when I had my ACT interview, as well as within the last couple of days on Facebook, I was one of those Facebook discussion persons, I was at a point of neutrality with regard to the 710. Tonight, I can conclusively say that I am against the tunnel option, period. I live in Northwest Pasadena, near where the 210 freeway came through, essentially, and we saw the amount of devastation that that did to our city, the clear but invisible dividing line that it made in the city of Pasadena. And it's become very clear, both through the studies, and there's been a very fair amount of discussion in our city, both through the No on 710 group, as well as other independent neighborhood discussions, that it's not something that would be supported here in Pasadena. We saw that the extension of the 210 freeway out east has caused additional traffic on our 210 freeway, and anybody that lives here knows you don't get on the 210 freeway after 2 p.m. in the afternoon if you want to actually get anywhere. So at this point, as Councilmember Tornick stated, I think we have to discuss what we do going forward, not just say that we're against something. And I do believe, I am hopeful that some of the other 4 options will rise to the top of the environmental report as the preferred option going forward. I do think that the light rail option is one of the best options moving forward, because it will provide some of the benefits of the additional transportation systems to lessen the congestion in the city, lessen the congestion that comes through Pasadena and the San Gabriel Valley in general. Hard rail will allow the opportunity for goods to be able to travel throughout the region as well, and also produce jobs, which I know is a huge concern as well for those that wanted the tunnel option. And so I believe that both the light rail and the hard rail options are ones that should rise to the top and that we should be discussing in more detail rather than the option that we don't want.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
So I had coffee with Joanne Knuckles about a month ago. If any of you want a history on this issue, she has an encyclopedic memory of the last 45 years and everything that's ever been done around the 710. But about 3/4 of the way through, Joanne finally says, "So are you for it or are you against it?" And I said, "You know, Joanne, I'm against it." And she says, "Good." And I said, "But probably not for the reasons you're against it." And she's against it for a lot of reasons. You know, I tend to agree with Mr. Thompson. I mean, I think spending $10 billion in the state of California on a 6-mile tunnel in Pasadena that has some significant environmental impacts and has certainly some very significant community opposition, given all of the liabilities that everyone's listed, you know, I just think that's completely unreasonable. I think our state's dealing with enough issues around water and energy and education and other infrastructural things that are probably going to rise to the top. Now, Mr. Tornick's right. It's not as though we can just expect that common sense is going to carry the day on this issue, right? We know, we can look at the last 45 years to know that that's not going to be the case. So you know, I think we need to be organizing across the region. So I've already started working with John Harabidian, the mayor of Sierra Madre, who's supporting my campaign, and he and I have talked quite a bit about it. I mean, clearly our neighboring cities need to create a unified voice to be presenting what we want. Mr. Tornick's right. We can't just say we don't want it. We have to give other ideas. And so I think that's going to be one of the key functions for the mayor, is to continue to build a regional alliance to address this issue and be able to explore the types of things that you were just talking about. You know, I too like light rail. I'm not convinced that light rail going the same line that we were planning to put a tunnel makes a lot of sense. I think that probably if we're going to explore light rail, we should look at things like sending it to Burbank Airport, at least selfishly, so we can all get to the airport on the train, right? So I think that's the opportunity for the mayor. We know that there are a lot of constraints in terms of what the mayor can actually do, but we do need a passionate vocal advocate making sure that we are representing the needs of our city.
Thank you. Okay. Did I get, the question is, did the audience get their answer? Yep, I'm going. Mr. Harden?
I feel that the 710 tunnel is, it's not practical on so many levels. I believe that even after its completion, whether, I don't know even how long that is from now, I think it'll cause more problems than it solves. I believe that'll be a traffic issue still. I believe that as Pasadena's, we won't receive any of the benefits from having that tunnel run through our city. In addition to this being California, an earthquake country, I would always question the integrity of the tunnel. And I believe that what we have to do is implement a combination of all the other alternatives, whether it be expansion of gold lines and light rails as a whole, and bus lines and things like that. And I would try to get away and get the city away from that tunnel alternative altogether. And I do believe that we don't want to leave ourselves open to any liabilities by, you know, totally, I guess, formally speaking against the tunnel. But I believe the people have spoken, and that the people have the right to have their opinions counted and formally introduced to the situation. And I do believe that that tunnel is nothing but bad news for Pasadena.
Mr. Shea?
Well, I'm glad they left the best for last here on this one. And the reason I say that is because my first home was on Orange Grove in Kensington. So I was immediately impacted with the alteration of transportation here in Pasadena when they brought the 210 in across the 134, and where the old Avery Dennison building was my neighborhood. So I know the immediate impact of modernization if it's practical and feasible. Over a 50-year litigation has ensued from the 710 freeway being connected here in Pasadena. I think just that experience alone is enough to say enough is enough. We don't have enough studies to show, even if we were to move forward with a tunnel, what is going to be the practical results that will occur. What will be the cost? What will be the timing? And how safe will it really be, a tunnel? Unless we know, we're in earthquake country here, and unless we really know how safe it's going to be, I don't think we've had an underground extension that's significant to determine or prove to us that that's going to work here in this area. Also, you got to remember, a lot of this is going to be based off of coming off of the Arroyo area, areas that are very hilly. It's going to be very difficult. I oppose it. I think that that's why it get caught up. Then you're going to cross into a couple of other cities that have fought strongly over the last 50 years. So how much more longer are we going to waste time to assess this? I think basically everybody has spoken. We got to look at alternative, either through the Mayoral or some other alternatives. And I think if we entertain that, we can find alternative solutions here.
Thank you very much. Our next question goes to Mr. Tornick. And the City of Pasadena has a living wage ordinance that establishes a minimum wage of $12.50 per hour for the city's private contractors. Would you support or oppose expanding the living wage ordinance to include all employees?
I think there should be a modification to the living wage ordinance. My preference would be to address the issue of an appropriate minimum wage across the board. And I think the way that that will be most successfully achieved, frankly, is on a regional basis following the leadership of the City of Los Angeles. I think that the way to make real progress in this area is to adopt the kind of proposal that Mayor Garcetti had originally put on the table, that is currently under review. And I think that if other communities follow the leadership of Los Angeles in this case, which is the 800-pound gorilla in the regional economy, I think that would be the direction that would be most successful for Pasadena to adopt.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes, I support an across-the-board living wage. I do believe we have to be mindful about its impact on small businesses. I don't believe that we have to wait until the City of Los Angeles passes their living wage ordinance. Pasadena is the crown of the San Gabriel Valley. We've always been a leader. I don't believe we have to wait to follow other cities. Pasadena is the city that it is today because we are on a large regional, statewide, and world stage. Some reasons good, some reasons bad, but I believe that the economy in Pasadena, where we're situated in our county and our region, allows us the opportunity to take risks, to be progressive, and to be an example for other cities. So, yes, I support.
Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, I think any movement on a livable wage, needs to be dealt with on a regional basis, or preferably even on a statewide basis, and phased in. I think given our vulnerabilities and our small businesses' vulnerabilities to, the neighboring communities that may or may not be acting similarly, it makes it really easy for people to move to other communities, and we're already starting to see that, obviously. I think that the livable wage piece is only part of the conversation. I mean, we need higher wage jobs in a lot of different areas. We have the opportunity to be the center of the innovation economy. We have institutional, contributors here in Pasadena that should allow us to do things that no other community in California can do. You're absolutely right. I mean, we should be the crown jewel for high-paying, high-skilled jobs, which means we need to start with good education, educating people to succeed in those jobs. We also need to, as a government, as a city government, really reorient ourselves to being a little bit more customer service friendly. I think that a lot of the local businesses feel as though they're often treated like they're fortunate to be doing business in our community. I have a friend who started a business here in 2000, and he now has over 120 employees. He's never asked for a thing from the city. And when he was renewing his lease recently, he called the city and said, "Hey, I'd just like to talk to you about it. It's 30% cheaper for me to go to Glendale or to Monrovia. What can we do?" And the city's answer was to give him 2 tickets to the UCLA U of A football game at the Rose Bowl. If that's the best we can do, then no wonder we're losing Avery Dennison and other organizations to neighboring communities. So we need to do better across the board to ensure that we're supporting our businesses, creating solid, livable wages, and higher wages beyond that, so people can afford to live here and thrive in our community.
Mr. Harden?
Well, I'm for the expansion of a livable wage to all employment in Pasadena. I do believe, this being Pasadena, we are seen as privileged, so I believe that it would make sense for us to increase our minimum wage to that livable wage. But I am concerned on how it will affect local businesses. I do not want to deter any new businesses from entering Pasadena or deciding to set up shop in Pasadena because of what they'll have to pay employees. So I would definitely take into account all the factors involved. But personally, I'm for it. But like I said, it will have an impact on local businesses. It will have an impact on how other businesses will decide whether or not they will bring their entities to Pasadena. But I do agree with the livable wage.
Thank you. Mr. Shea?
Well, thank you for a livable wage question. And the reason I say that is because I am a small business for 35 years, second generation. My mom owns a Little Red Hen Cafe up in Altadena that inspired me to believe in entrepreneurship. One of the most important key to entrepreneurship is sustainability. If we do not foster sustainability here in Pasadena, we will not keep businesses around. And the reason I say that is because I'm in my third cycle of a recession since graduating from USC in 1981. One of the focal points that I have focused in on is really sustainability. I would believe in what is called scale wages. Scale wages would vary from either a younger person to an older person as to what they're going to actually be earning, because if everybody made the same wages across the board at a higher increment, that will break a small business, trust me. And I have seen a lot of business go out of business on South Lake, in Old Town, and Paseo, because there's no real formula that adjusts to our economy. We have to be very mindful of that, or we're going to lose more businesses, and we're going to have more empty storefronts in our area. So my years of experience as a real estate broker, my years of experience involving Northwest Commission, which I am the vice chair of Northwest Commission, has said we have to make adjustments on wages that will work. If we have younger people, then we can scale it to a rate that will compensate a younger person. If we have an adult with kids, we have to be mindful of that. But overall, we have to be mindful of how to sustain businesses here in Pasadena. Otherwise, we'll lose as a whole, because we will then look to have vacancies that would then also lead to homeless moving into areas where they see vacancies. And trust me, I'm on South Lake in Cordova. All right.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
As Mr. Shea said quite eloquently, Pasadena has some serious economic issues. Northwest Pasadena, East Colorado, South Lake, for example, many vacancies. Drive up and down South Lake Avenue and just take a look and see how many vacant storefronts you see there. We've got to address issues like that and make sure that we can keep our economy a lot more robust than it is certainly in those areas of this city. We're not Arcadia, we're not like Glendale, which have a great, vibrant retail economy. We don't have that. And we need to really focus and get going on things like that to improve our own economy here. I'm not saying that people are fairly compensated. Again, I think Mr. Shea is right on target. You're talking about small businesses coming in. If you look up and down the area of our community now, the mom and pops have begun to go away and are going away. They're being replaced to the extent that they are replaced by the chains, and so that's not bad in some sense, but I think we need to be realistic. And what I would like to do is to work with the small businesses community, with all of our citizens, with the real estate industry, et cetera, and begin to put together, look seriously at this. What is our wage problem? Is it a problem that we ought to address, and if so, how? But I think that's the approach to take. You got to get the people working together. The mayor of this city is not going to be a figurehead. The mayor is going to be the leader of the community. And the mayor has to exercise that leadership, talent, and ability to be able to get people working together. This is an area we can't do it otherwise. If we're going to try to look at wages, we've got to have agreement throughout the community as to what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
Thank you. We're going to go to our next question. Ms. Robinson, what is your plan as mayor to create more affordable housing units or apartments in Pasadena?
Thank you. I've been a member of the Economic Development and Technology Committee since I was elected in 2007. And one of the things that I have long been fighting for that I have not been able to get consensus among council members, first at the committee level, so that it can even get before the council, is for us to have a second unit ordinance policy that works. We do have a current policy, however, it's one that essentially just sits on the books. Since its enactment, there's only been 3 projects that have even made an attempt to start citywide. 3 of them had plans, one of them actually began, but it never finished. I think the requirements that are currently within the policy, which requires 15,000 square feet, is too high because most of the lots in the city that are of that size are not in areas where people would even choose to utilize the ordinance. I believe that we need to lower that threshold to 10,000 or 7,000 square feet in order for the families that would benefit from it most can choose to utilize the ordinance in order to grow our affordable housing stock. And that's an action that's not going to take any money from the city. It's just going to take political will. One of the other things that we can do that also would not take any city funds, just political will, would be to eliminate the option for apartment buildings to convert to condos. While it's a laudable effort to attempt to make some form of housing in the city that people can afford, because condos traditionally are less costly than single-family homes, it takes away from our affordable housing stock. I am currently the only renter on the city council, and so I am personally familiar with the challenges of renting in our city. I'm personally familiar with the challenges of trying to get into the home buying market in the city of Pasadena. And I think we have to make a stronger effort at educating the public and allowing opportunities for people to become home buyers.
Thank you. We are going to our next, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. You know, clearly this is a huge issue, and we hear this, I'm sure all of us hear this all the time, and not just around affordable housing, but also workforce housing, right? I mean, the fact that, you know, again, so few, our own police chief hasn't been able to buy a house to live in the city of Pasadena, you know, so, you know, we need teachers, we need police officers, we need firemen, we need nurses, we need those who are serving our community to be able to afford to live in our community. And there are a lot of challenges around doing that. We know that the cost of living here and the cost of real estate is very significant. So there's no magic bullet to this, I don't think. There are a couple, you know, private sector solutions and partnership-based solutions that I think are important. You know, I'd like to see us working with CalPERS to get them investing in projects that would be used for rentals, because I think rentals are a huge issue. You know, providing tax credits for local businesses and builders so that they can you know, build more workforce and affordable housing here. You know, one of the things, I recently sat down with a guy who very successfully on the private side builds affordable housing throughout all of LA County, and they won't come anywhere near Pasadena today because their relationship with our city around planning and with the council and the ability to get approved on projects has been so arduous that they won't even come here and consider it. And if we're pushing away people who are doing great work in other communities, then we need to do better around that. And other communities are doing that. You know, Maui in Hawaii, which is a tale of two cities type community, not unlike ours, heavily reliant on a fair amount of tourism and with very expensive homes and very poor homes, they've been able to enact something where they can guarantee you can get from A to Z in 90 days, so that if builders come in, they know what it's going to take to get approval on their projects, figure out what kind of transparency is needed for them to have approval on their projects, and move forward. When we can do that, then we can go to banks and convince them to use CRA loans and things like that more effectively, and I think we can start to make some more progress throughout the city.
Thank you. Mr. Harden.
I believe that without development funds for affordable housing, it's hard to create affordable housing, but it's not impossible. Pasadena is a affluent and very resourceful city, and I believe that we can solve our own problems in many ways, and especially, particularly affordable housing. Places like San Mateo have a housing endowment and regional trust, and it's made up of community members, city officials, and county workers throughout the, well, down here would be throughout the San Gabriel Valley, and I want to mimic that they have up there, because what it does, it's a finance team. It's a finance team with influential members on the team that kind of use non-traditional means and traditional means of attaining the funding themselves. We can solve our own problems if we take the initiative and tap into our own resources, meaning our own private resources. We have a lot of funds available from the private sector that can kind of help and provide loans for developers to create affordable housing. We have to create those incentives, but we do have to explore non-traditional means. We have things like crowdfunding. We have the explosion of the internet, and there's so many ways to get the money necessary to create a certain amount of affordable housing units every year, but we do have to be creative in how we do that, and we do have to explore all means of doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Shea.
Well, another great question that I love because I'm a realtor here, and I've worked very closely with Bill Wong at the city with affordable housing and affordable housing models, as well as being the vice chair of Northwest Commission. I must commend my fellow commissioners for finally getting the Heritage Square, which is an affordable housing, pushed forward after 3 or 4 years of struggling to make the financing and make it work so that we can have an affordable project over on Fair Oaks. But as far as where we need to go in the future, from my experience, we need to set up a threefold approach. One, we need to make sure we can continue to build units that are affordable in Pasadena based on our limited space. We need to find spaces that we can get the maximum for affordable housing. Most of the development that's going on now is upper scale. We need to make sure we can look into that, and I think we can if we have the leadership that's going to commit to that. I don't believe that we have. 2, I believe that the first-time buyer program was a great incentive to help people get into it back some 8, 10 years ago. I think we got to go back to the fundamentals of helping people to get into first-time buyer programs if we have to create a funding source ourselves. I think Pasadena is affluent enough and certainly have enough money between all of its private sectors, its nonprofit organizations, to create whatever it wishes to produce for its citizens if they make it part of their plan.
And in conclusion. I'm tough. All right, Mr. Thompson.
I think we'll send you back to the assembly.
I was tough there too.
The limited affordable housing we have in Pasadena certainly is an issue because it would be really advantageous to have our police officers living here, police chief, the city manager, the staff of the city, etc. Unfortunately, we can't do very much about that. We've passed an ordinance a number of years back that requires developers either to provide a certain percentage of affordable units within the developments that are being put together, or to put money into an inclusionary housing fund, in lieu fund, inclusionary in lieu fund, I think it's called. And so that's where we are. Before we start talking about more funds or raising money through other means to provide for affordable housing or whatever else, I think unfortunately we have to address the issues that are very much being revealed, very much a part of the press these days, through the lack of the loss of $6.4 million over a period of 11 years. How this could happen, I think, is beyond the belief of any of us who reside in this community. And we need to address that, look at, the city has something like 130 different funds it provides money into. Each of those, in my belief, has to be audited by somebody outside the city, and we have to make sure we know what money is there, how it's being spent, what it's being spent for, and to be confident and comfortable that it's not being taken away, embezzled, like the other fund, the Utility Underground Fund has been for the past 11 years. So those are issues we've got to look at. What I would do is insist on doing an outside audit of all these various funds, see what the results are, know where the money is being spent, know we're okay with those or not. And at that point in time, then I think we have to make decisions as to is there something else we need to do for affordable housing? When you talk about finding spaces, where are you going to find them in this community? You got to take parkland and build housing on that?
Thank you.
I don't think so.
Thank you. How about that? All right, we're moving on. Our next answer, Mr. Tornick.
Thank you. Affordable housing is a subject that I've devoted a good part of my life to. as planning director in the city, as a 20-year board member at Pasadena Neighborhood Housing Services in Northwest Pasadena, and currently serving as treasurer of Link Housing, a nonprofit statewide organization that's actually built 7,500 units throughout the state of California. So it is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. We are not going to be able to build our way out of the affordable housing crisis. New housing is simply too expensive to serve the needs in terms of meeting our affordability issue. The most important thing, we're also not going to, by the way, audit our way out of the affordable housing crisis. But I think the critical point here is that the most important thing we can do to preserve affordability in Pasadena is to maintain our existing housing stock, protect it, and make sure that we use the inclusionary housing funds as efficiently as possible, probably to buy down long-term affordability through an affordability easement and a variety of other creative programs that are being used elsewhere. With all due respect, I think the second unit ordinance certainly should be modified and would do some good, but would have minimal impact. And the neighborhood impacts in terms of off-street parking, overcrowding, and other issues are why there have been reservations about pursuing that program. But I do think if we can preserve our existing housing stock, use our resources carefully to buy it down on a long-term basis, we can make a dent in the affordability housing crisis here.
Thank you. We are going to go to Mr. Morgan with our next question, which is our 6th question, and it was just brought up. It's an easy one. A former city employee was recently arrested in connection with the alleged misappropriation of public funds and embezzlement of up to $6.4 million from Pasadena over the past 11 years. What specific things are you going to do to address this issue, and what should the consequences be for current city staff? In essence, you're in charge, and what are you going to do?
I hope Mr. Thompson will still have something to say now that he's already answered that. But I first of all, was totally dismayed, of course, as all of us were. I mean, I think Pasadena is far too sophisticated a city to have something that low tech happen. I mean, when we watched the report that day at the council meeting on the Monday and they described it, it sounded as though it was 4 people in a tube of whiteout. You know, I mean, it just seems impossible that we could be defrauded of that much money. And that's probably part of our disappointment. That just doesn't happen in Pasadena. Sadly, I actually wasn't as shocked as I should have been. And maybe part of that is that I think we still have some systems in place that don't adequately deal with the complexity of the types of challenges we're facing today as a community. We need to bring in new approaches to dealing with these things. You know, nobody likes the answers that any of us are giving around this fraud because they're so basic. They're general accounting principles for the most part. You know, we should be reconciling the invoices submitted and the checks cut on the other end, right? I mean, this is sort of basic, and everybody hates that answer because it's pretty obvious, right? But, you know, I also think, clearly we need to commit to the internal audit function. There had to be a reason why it was discontinued in 2010 and 11, and it couldn't have just been money because it's so essential. So that says to me we probably didn't have it set up in a way that we valued it enough to keep it or prioritize it. You know, auditing is more than just checking everything on the back end. It's about ensuring that we have accountability and transparency and performance really at the front end as well. And in other cities, large cities, cities with far fewer resources than ours have been able to do that. The city of Baltimore, Maryland, has performance-based budgeting, and they've saved millions of dollars, which means they are using every taxpayer dollar more effectively, just as we should here. And I think that that's really our opportunity. In terms of what we should do, or probably what everyone's interested in is who we should fire, you know, I think that real leadership is determined by how you respond to crisis sometimes, as opposed to how we got into it. And we haven't yet seen that.
Thank you. Got to be fair. All right. Next, Mr. Harden.
Well, first, I would eliminate the complacence of our local government. I believe that there are a lot of city employees and officials that sit on their position without worries or without fear of losing their job. And I think after years of that, you start feeling like you're not being watched or looked at, and then all kind of things happen at that point. So I would definitely improve accountability by shaking things up, I guess you should say, and just by showing folks that all these jobs are positions of trust. And it's not that we didn't have rules in place to keep this from happening. It's just sad that it happened anyway, and it happened for so long. So that shows that there's a certain amount of complacence in our local government, starting at the top, because like I said, the council sets the tone for how the departments do their work. And if the council is active and energetic and proactive in engaging the different department heads and actually going through some of the material and some of the day-to-day operations themselves, they can kind of see or identify potential problems. And one thing I would want to do is review and even negotiate where we can all city contracts as of right now, because I bet we can find a lot of money that we need if we go through some of these contracts.
Thank you. Mr. Shea.
Well, I love a question like this, and the reason why is because as the vice chair of Northwest Commission, whenever the city comes before the Northwest Commission, they think I'm too hard on them. The reason they think I'm too hard on them is because I'm asking them very, very germane questions about budgets and where is the money going. I think for any city to exist, there has to be true accountability. I think what is truly demonstrated in this embezzlement case is that we need to be in tune. Somewhere along the lines, we fell asleep at the wheel. Now we're paying a dear price. If somebody ran their own business, there is no way on earth. Trust me, 35 years running my own business, my mother, 12 children running hers for almost 40 years. We know that you've got to have accountability. Accountability should exist not only in small businesses, but in our municipality. And I think as a result of 11 years of not being in tune with what has transpired, surely suggests to all of us someone's fell asleep at the wheel. So I think what I would do is I would certainly make sure that every quarter we have reports as to any changes. Every annual report shows what the expenses has been because of the variations that happened in this transaction from 2002 of $37,000 before the embezzlement started, all the way to a high in 2007 of $1.7 million. Just those variations alone would suggest somebody needs to be looking at the numbers. So as a person who loves numbers in real estate, I would certainly say that this is something that we would certainly need to have for our own municipality to be in tune with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson.
Well, they mentioned a moment ago the fact that an embezzlement of this nature could take place over an 11-year period of time is absolutely amazing. Somebody obviously, or some bodies, some people obviously were not doing their job. We have a Municipal Services Committee, a Finance Committee, a City Council that periodically, as I understand it, is to review matters like this. And if that happened, something went wrong on that as well. I think you got to review the city underground funding program. You've got to make sure that that's being handled properly in the future. But just stop and think about it. If you were brought a check being made payable to a church or to a religious organization, wouldn't you want to ask the question, well, why are we doing this? And again, it didn't follow the procedure of up the chain of command where apparently the same man was allowed to take the check up, get it signed by one person, signed by the next person, then brought back, and then he could change $40,000 to $140,000. That's ridiculous. That's not the way that businesses function. That's not the way that we need to do things here. So I think as we investigate this and bring it to a close, anyone found not to have done his or her job properly ought to be let go or at least subjected to some appropriate discipline. But we've got to put in place a process by which this does not happen again. Again, as I said before, the mayor is the leader of the city. The mayor has to work with the council and staff and the public to make sure that there is proper oversight, there is transparency, there is candid honesty going on. Clearly, that has not been happening, and we need to take steps to make sure that that does not repeat itself. Again, 130 funds? What are they doing? What are they for? What's the money in there? How much? What's it being spent for? We need to find out, make sure that we're doing our job properly. And by the way, drive by the places, the residents or the address identified in the SR News. Take a look at that.
Thank you.
The one place you find it's a collision. It's a
Thank you.
collision center. It's a home with a BMW in the driveway.
All right. We're going
I
to
have pictures here. If you want to take those with you, I'll give them to you.
All right, we're going to go to Mr. Tornick.
I have been a city employee, and I have run businesses both large and small. So this particular scandal, this theft, has had a huge impact on me in terms of how I feel about our city. I think that Pasadena has been known as almost a model in terms of how we conduct ourselves. And the vast majority of the 2,000 city employees do their jobs in a serious way. They're diligent and they're serious, and they shouldn't be demonized. However, it is clear that while you hold yourself up as a model for other kinds of communities, that can sometimes lead to some sort of smugness, or what I deemed as the culture of complacency. And that was at work here. There's a combination of circumstances, some fairly unique to this particular fund, which I've been critical of for some time, and some that have to do with a general, and we're trying to find out now, how pervasive an attitude about being somewhat casual about following procedures. There's no lack of procedures in the city. The worst part of the audit that I've read 3 times now is that it includes the manual of how these bills are supposed to be paid. And if the employees had followed, who were involved, a small number, had followed 20 or 25% of those procedures, this could have never happened. So obviously there are a series of changes that have already been put in place. There are others that will be put in place. People who are responsible will be punished. But I think it's important that we not demonize city employees, or that we instill what's been called a culture of fear in the building. I think people need to be held accountable, which means they need to do the job they're paid for and take the rules seriously. And I think that message has come across loud and clear to people in City Hall.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson. Excuse me.
Some of the things that I said at our first public meeting after this happened over the December 2014 holiday break. First of all, I personally apologize to the taxpayers of the city of Pasadena. This is something that should not have happened. It is embarrassing for the city council, for the city executive team, for the city employees. I agree with Mr. Tornick when he says the vast majority of our city employees across the board are good people that are in public service because they want to do a great job, because they want to serve the public. This embezzlement happened, after reading the audit report, this embezzlement happened. It was not rocket science, as Mr. Morgan alluded to. It was complacency and a lack of attention to detail. As we've seen in so many instances, if we can liken another important issue, trust of the police department, there's no silver bullet to resolving the issue. Like the police department, citizen input and oversight, a police inspector is just one part of the equation. You know, body cameras, dashboard cams, you know, training are all part of that equation in order to make that situation better. Here, it's going to be a combination of reviewing the policies and practices, and we can put all the rules in place that we want to, but if they're not followed, it won't matter. I'm supportive moving forward of the complete audit of the 131 funds as recommended by Councilmember Gordo, as well as the appointment of the ad hoc committee, which is comprised of members of the city council. And some may call that too little too late, but I believe that the mayor of the city, the future mayor of the city, one of the jobs is to apologize publicly and be accountable on behalf of the entire city. And I believe that's what's been done. We can't wallow in what happened. We have acknowledged it, and we have to move forward.
Thank you. All right. We've each had an opportunity to answer a question first, so we're going to liven it up with our one-word rapid-fire questions. We're going to start with Mr. Morgan. You're going to get the first one, and then we're going to go down the row and then go to Ms. Robinson, Mr. Tornick, and go. Everybody's going to get a chance to go first on a rapid-fire question.
These are yes or no.
These are yes or no or a specific question. And this one's a tough one. Are you an ACT member?
No.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Tornick? Mr. Thompson?
Not now, but before.
That's too many words. Mr. Shea said yes.
Yes.
Mr. Shea said yes. Mr. Harden?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's 2 words. All right. Ms. Robinson, how long have you lived in the city of Pasadena?
36 years.
Mr. Tornick?
32 years.
Mr. Thompson?
45 years.
Mr. Shea?
52 years.
Mr. Harden?
15 years off and on.
Mr. Morgan?
12 years.
12 years. Mr. Tornick, tell us 3 organizations you are a member of or actively involved in the city. 3. So you get more than 1 word.
Apart from the city council?
Apart from the city council. You can tell. City council. City council qualifies as 1. City council.
The Pasadena City Council, the Link Housing's not a Pasadena organization. I'm not a big organizational.
Okay. Mr. Thompson.
Pasadena City College Board of Trustees, Pasadena Educational Foundation, currently is the president of the board, Rose Bowl Aquatic Center, and if you like, Pasadena Museum of History, et cetera, et cetera.
That's enough. Mr. Shea.
Vice Chair of Northwest Commission, Vice Chair of PCC Citizen Oversight Committee, Coach for YES programs for our youth, Coach for Trojan football for our youth. I sit on the Outreach Committee, Government Outreach Committee for Pasadena Board of Realtors.
That's enough. Next one. Mr. Harden.
None.
All right. Mr. Morgan.
I have kids, so Pasadena Southwest Little League, AYSO, and Kids Space.
Okay. Ms. Robinson.
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Pasadena Alumni Chapter, the NAACP, and Advisory Board for Rosemary Children's Services.
Okay. Mr. Thompson. You get the next question. Should Pasadena be building, and this you get 1 word, be building more hotels or rental apartments or affordable housing purchase units? Which should be our top priority of the 3? Hotels, rental apartments, or affordable housing purchase units?
You want that answer with 1 word?
I'll give you, all right, I'll make that one a 30-second question. 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Well, I think we have enough hotels in the process of being built now. We don't need any more hotels that I can think of, although Mike Ross from the Pasadena Convention Center might have a different view on that one. But yes, I think rental housing would be certainly should be a priority to try to get constructed.
Good answer. Next person, Mr. Shea.
Absolutely affordable housing. We are now dealing with a city that's divided. It resonates all the time that we live in 2 cities. So we have to look at alternative plans to make sure that those who are unable to afford Pasadena can still live here in Pasadena.
All right, Mr. Harden. Hotels, rental apartments, or purchase rental affordable housing units?
Definitely affordable housing.
All right. Mr. Morgan.
Hotels bring in revenues. Revenues allow people to make money and rent houses and give our city more money to invest in affordable housing. So I'm going with the revenue generator, hotels.
All right, Ms. Robinson.
Trick question, but if I have to choose, I would say affordable workforce housing.
Mr. Tornick.
Rental.
Rental units. Okay. We are going to Mr. Shea. Should the NFL play in the Rose Bowl?
Wow!
Yes or no?
That's a tough question. I just finished walking in that district. Come on. No. I think
So yes or no?
no, I don't believe so.
All right, Mr. Harden.
No.
Mr. Morgan.
Can they play in the Super Bowl once every 5 years?
Yes or no? Should the NFL be in the Rose Bowl?
No.
Ms. Robinson.
No.
Mr. Tornick.
No.
No, okay. Mr. Harden. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. I'm sorry. Should the NFL play in the Rose Bowl?
No, other than Super Bowls.
No other than Super Bowls. Too many questions, too many words. All right, I'll be fair. Who thinks no other than Super Bowls? All right, that's all by yourself. I'm getting the hook, but we're still, we got a couple more minutes. 8:45, we're not starting the next one at 9, right?
No, 8:45.
8:45, all right. Last question. Last question. I'm trying to think what should be a good close. All right, I know this is on everybody's mind, and we'll start with Mr. Harden. Last question. All you get is a number. What should the minimum wage be in Pasadena?
$12 an hour.
Mr. Shea.
Minimum wage should be scaled for students up to adults at starting at $10 an hour up to 12.
This is the last question?
This is the last question.
Oh,
I was going to go to another one, but I'm getting the hook.
my goodness gracious. I think right now the ordinance that we have does provide for $12 and maybe 50 cents an hour or something like that, so that sounds like a good number.
Mr. Tornick.
$12.50.
Ms. Robinson.
$15 is a good starting point for discussion.
Mr. Morgan.
$14 an hour.
$14 an hour. Hey,
$10.99.
let's
That's my lucky number.
give it up. Let's give it up to our mayoral candidates.